Welcome to Salvage, a podcast for conversations with artists about the repurposed materials they use in their art practice. Thanks so much for being here. Please welcome to my conversation with Lynn Goldstein. Lynn and I have known each other for many years now, and we talk all the time. So I'm looking forward to recording this conversation for you because our conversations are always fascinating to me, and I hope you'll enjoy them. Lynn is an abstract and figurative artist who is in Washington, outside of Washington, D.C. She is deeply intrigued by history and the gradual passage of time that is evident in whether it's frescoes, worn paint on building walls, and the intricate textures of the natural world. I can't wait for you to hear all about her. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Natalia.
Thanks so much for joining me on this new endeavor of mine, podcasting. A whole new world.
I think it's great. I'm always impressed and interested in what you're up to.
Thank you. Thank you. So, the podcast is conversations with artists who use repurposed materials for their practice. And most of the artists I have been interviewing here are specifically creating things from repurposed materials. But you are a painter,
I am indeed.
a landscape painter, an abstract painter. You also work with pastels and all sorts of other things. And yet I invited you to be on this podcast.
I know, which is kind of stressed me out a little bit. And funny thing is, I really don't use pastels. I used
Well,
to
you used to use them a lot.
for for a long time. Today was the first day that I pulled out a pastel in probably 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And the only reason I did it was to see whether or not I was going to like a specific thing on an acrylic.
So do you mostly use acrylic paint these days?
I use oil and cold wax and acrylic, but lately I've been cheating on oil with acrylic. It's really, like I'm cheating. I can't like get over acrylics right now. I have a crush going on.
Okay.
Which I know, acrylics are the devil because, they are plastic and
That's liquid plastic essentially.
yeah, it is. And I've been doing research, which I'm not going to have to do a ton of research, but there are sustainable ways to dispose of like your acrylic water because you use water since acrylics are water mixable. I use water and the acrylic gets in the water.
Right.
And you can use this stuff called crash, and you end up pouring the solution. It's a long story, and I'm not going to go into it, but ultimately what ends up happening is you pour your dirty water in a container and you then put it through um, a filter, and then you can throw out that water so that it's not going into the plastics are not going into the water supply.
Right. I have heard of people using filters, but I didn't realize that there was some sort of a solution that you need to add.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why that is. That's what I need to do a little bit of research on because I really don't want to be pouring it down the drain.
Right.
I do make sure whenever I finish a day of working, I do take my brushes and I paint them on, on a
A
panel.
surface, a panel.
Yeah, and then that way I'm A, not wasting paint, B, I'm not throwing paint away, C, I'm not putting the paint in the water, right? So I try to do it as responsibly as I can.
But there's still paint left on a brush that you still have to wash out a little bit at the end anyway.
Yeah, you'd be surprised how it gets in there, but it also, I've used so much of it on that panel that it's not, there's not that much.
Right.
It's more than you would think, but it's not like a ton.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. It's funny. There's so many considerations about making your practice as green as possible, no matter what type of an artist you are.
That's right. And even, and even just toxicity. One of the reasons that I'm not using pastel anymore is because I don't really want to breathe it.
Oh, yeah.
But that said, even when I was working in pastel, I have a vent. So I was venting the dust as best I could so
Right.
that it wasn't breathing it. But today, I actually, when I used it a little bit on this acrylic that I'm working on, I I could tell I was breathing it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because it's been so long since I've used it. Um,
Right.
some people actually use a respirator when they work in pastel.
Oh, interesting. I had no idea. But then also, so if you're using a vent to vent it all out, but then you're sending it out into the atmosphere.
Well, actually, it's in a canister.
Oh,
And so it goes into a canister that is filtered.
a
And then after, however long, if you work on it a lot, then you're going to want to replace
filter.
that filter,
Got
kind
it.
of like an air filter in your
Oh,
house.
okay, got it. Okay. Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, interesting. Huh.
And then when I use oil, I use water mixable oil. So
So that's
I'm
better than linseed oil, right?
well, linseed oil is not the problem. The problem are the solvents. So
Explain that a little more. What does that mean?
solvents like turpentine
To clean
or
your brushes
to
with?
clean your brushes, and a lot of people use turpentine or turpenoid or something like that. Turpenoid has no scent, so
Uh-huh.
you don't smell it, but it's off-gassing in the air. You just don't smell that it's off-gassing in the air.
Oh. So what
Um,
is the linseed oil then is used? What's that?
Linseed oil is used as a medium. So, it's generally not really that much of a problem.
Okay.
It's not a problem. What the problem is are the solvents. Now, when I use cold wax medium with my oils, that does have a solvent in it. So I don't use very much cold wax medium.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's another world out there. The acrylics are they're much less toxic than conventional oils for sure.
Oh, okay.
Water mixable oils are really not, they're fine
Uh-huh.
because you don't have the solvents.
So do mixable oils smell like oil paint?
Yes, they do.
Oh, okay. Because
They do.
I don't know what it is, but I love the smell of oil
I
paint.
do too. I do too. In fact, when I go into a place, when I go into a studio or something and I smell oil, it makes me happy.
Yeah.
There are a lot of my students do not, they hate the smell of oil paint.
Oh, interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
for me,
different.
I mean, I haven't used oil paint since, oh, I guess I did use it in college. I think since maybe a few years after college, because I did take some classes after college. So I'm thinking, anyhow, it's been over 20 years since I've used since I've used oil paint. But maybe because of I have these nostalgic memories of oil
Mhm.
paint classes that when I smell it, it's exciting to me. I love it. And even oil paint sticks, which I do use occasionally in my practice, I love the smell of them.
Well, and see, they've got the oil in them.
Yeah,
Whether that's linseed or walnut or whatever, they have it in there.
yeah.
I don't understand people that don't like the smell of it. It's like when my students say, "Oh, but does it smell like oil paint?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah." They're like, "Oh, I hate that." And I'm like, "You got to be kidding me. I love the smell of oil paint." Because it
I think
does. It just takes me right back because that's what I started with in college
yeah,
was oil. Yeah.
yeah. It's funny. It's like one of those things. Some people love the smell of fresh asphalt, and some people can't stand it.
Yeah, I'm kinda in the I can't stand camp for that. Yeah.
I actually kinda like it.
Well, I know people that don't like the smell of lavender. I'm like, "What? Really?"
Yes, that's true.
So, we're all just so different, which
Yes,
is a
we
good
are.
thing.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, but you do use some repurposed materials as tools when you paint. Can you tell
I
us about that?
Yeah, I do, and I love it. It's like I love it because it kinda cracks me up because my husband will throw these things away, and I'll be, "Wait, wait, 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 what are you doing?" No, no, no. You have to wash that because I'm taking it to the studio because I find these things. I don't really dumpster dive, although, that could be in my future. I don't know. But right now, I don't dumpster dive. But I do go into our kitchen garbage and I will find things that I can use in my painting practice. Whether that's in oil or whether that's in acrylic, I can still use the things. And I'm going to show you one and I'll describe it. Okay, so here's one you see.
Is
Can you
that a
see?
plastic container?
Yeah, it's a plastic. I think it had
Takeout container.
Asian dumplings. It's really pretty small. You can kind of see it's
Yeah,
pretty
like
small. It's about maybe 4 inches wide and it's a circle and it has these wonderful grooves in the bottom
yeah,
and
it's a bunch of
makes
ridges. Like it looks like a
yeah.
kind of like a tire or something.
Yeah, yeah, and
Okay.
it's one of my favorite things to use. I mean, I treat this the same way that I treat any of my supplies that I want to reuse. And here's the problem. I haven't found where we got these because what if this one wears out?
Right. It's irreplaceable. I actually love the patina it has acquired from all the paint on it.
Yeah, yeah. And I will actually take, rubbing alcohol and clean it because mostly on here it has acrylic, and acrylic, if you put rubbing alcohol on it, it's going to lift.
Oh, okay.
So not out of your clothes, but,
Right. But on plastic.
all kinds of other things.
So that little round container, so you put paint on it and you smush it around on your painting, or do you have a painting already painted and you smush the paint around?
I don't smush the paint around. I use it like a stamp.
Ah, okay.
So, and that was a really good question because it seemed obvious, right? And clearly it wasn't. So, yeah, I'll put the paint on it and I'll stamp it on.
Ah,
And now it leaves that imprint of that little ridged circle. And
yes.
it's fabulous. I mean, I've used it on all kinds of paintings. And the thing is, they're they're subtle
Mm.
and I'll paint over them oftentimes. So you don't really see them until you get close up, and then you'll see this little whisper of this circle. And I love that. And then
Yeah.
here's another one of my favorites. Can you see?
Oh, is that a stencil?
No, this isn't. This is the bottom of a takeout sushi container.
Wh- Where do you, okay, we don't have those kind of sushi containers around where we are with
Well,
beautiful little ridges.
yeah, well, it's actually an Asian design. It's an Asian design that's pretty classic. It's one, two, three, four, five. Kind of like a star,
Yeah, like a 6 point, oh, it's like a 6 point star.
6 or 5. I don't know.
Yeah,
One, two,
six.
a six. It's six. Yeah. Um, and I actually, when I was in Japan last, I went into an elevator and the design was on the ceiling of the elevator. So you see it a lot in Asia.
Well, that's
Um,
interesting, huh?
but this was, from a takeout container, and I use this as a stamp also.
Mhm.
So, those are my two precious ones. Those are my two favorites because sometimes I'll try something and it crashes and burns, but
Right.
but these have worked really well. And I just keep my eye out for them because you just don't know what you're going to find.
And how long have you had those 2 pieces?
Over a year, at
Oh, okay.
least over a year, probably longer than that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I
Yeah.
would think that eventually the plastic might probably crack on you, and then you'll have to figure out a way of replacing it.
I know, and this is heartbreaking because I have not seen this design recently either, and I got sushi just the other day.
Alright, well, now I'll have to keep an eye on my takeout sushi containers just in
Yeah.
case I see something that is gonna yell "Lynn" at me, so then I'll send it to you.
Oh, I would love that. I think I got this one at H Mart, but I haven't seen them since. So, H Mart's a Korean restaurant, and
Yeah.
I mean not restaurant, grocery store.
Yeah, we have those here as well. Not
They
that many, but there's one that I can think of that's close by, and I think I've seen another one somewhere else.
have great produce, by the way.
Yes, they do. They have a great fish market, actually, I think. So I'm writing down HMAR to share in the show notes.
Oh, okay.
Um, so anything else you use in your painting practice that's kind of wacky and maybe a repurposed material?
Well, I have used books
Oh, in
in
painting practice.
not in my painting practice. Sorry, I used books for a couple of installations that
Oh,
I did.
right, right.
Yeah. Yeah. So those, see what else, and I've used for an installation, I used a stool, I used things that I found from antique stores. I used an old trunk, like a
Yeah, yeah.
traveling trunk. I use old photographs. Um, yeah, so I do use, you kind of convinced me. Yeah, yeah, I do sometimes use some things that are would maybe end up in the landfill. Not necessarily plastic, but would maybe end up in the
So
landfill.
tell me about your book installation. Like, where did you find the books? Did the books have any meanings? And what did you do to the books?
Well, both of the installations that I did had to do with my Jewish roots, and particularly what I was thinking a lot about. One of them had to do with my family's immigration to this country around the turn of the last century. So what I wanted books that told stories, and I wanted those books to be in Yiddish because my family came from Eastern Europe. And so many of us, our families came from Eastern Europe. So Yiddish was the language that my grandparents spoke, and especially when they didn't want me to understand what they were saying, which was really annoying. So I ended up actually contacting the Yiddish Book Center, which is in Amherst, Massachusetts,
Oh,
to ask them if they had any books that I could use for this specific installation that I was thinking about that had to do with Jewish immigration. And the name of the piece is Diaspora. Um, and I contacted the Yiddish Book Center, and they were great because they ended up telling me that full they had the full collection of multiple same collection, because apparently any number of families had a collection of these books, and they were all stories by Sholem Aleichem. And for those of you who don't know who Sholem Aleichem is, you do, but you don't know it. If you know Fiddler on the Roof,
yeah.
that Fiddler on the Roof came from a story from Sholem Aleichem.
Oh,
And so, but this was a complete set of books of stories by Sholem Aleichem, all in Yiddish. And they shipped them to me. I just had to pay for the shipping. They didn't charge me for the books.
oh.
And I know it was like, huzzah, this these great books. And so then I took those books, and I talked to them about the sizes that I needed for the books, because they needed to fit in this specific trunk that I had gotten at a big flea market.
Mhm.
Um, and so what I ended up doing then was painting the books, the covers. And then the books were in the trunk, facing the spines facing up, so that you would
They were
see
closed, but the spines were facing up.
the way that the piece was displayed was the lid was up
Okay.
on the trunk.
Okay.
And so then I put the books inside the trunk
Mhm.
with the spines facing, so that people could see those spines. And then
Okay.
what I ended up doing was I painted aspen trees on the spines.
Ooh.
And the idea behind that was that aspen trees are the largest organism on the planet. They're all connected by their root system.
Oh, I have heard about this.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And
Yeah.
actually, the first time I heard that was from a rabbi.
Oh, Interesting.
Just that I had no idea. And then I was like, well, that's really interesting. Many years before I made this piece.
Mhm.
But then, trees often figure in my work. So it made sense for trees to be in this particular piece. And so that, the idea is that we're all connected and
Yeah.
we're all connected. I mean, I believe, I'm not talking about just the Jewish population, which is clearly connected through DNA, but also we're all connected,
Oh,
all of us.
totally. Totally.
So that's a tends to be kind of an important message in my mind. Doesn't always show up in my work, but it's there.
Yeah.
Um, so that piece, that piece was completed, and then that actually was exhibited at the Smithsonian in 2017, I think.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and I used photographs of my family and also photographs of other people's family, people that are on my VIP email list. I would send out an email and said, "Hey, do you have photographs that I can borrow
Mhm.
of your family members that immigrated?" And I found out so much about people that immigrated around the turn of the century. I had no idea. I mean, this is my ignorance showing that I had no idea that a lot of Jewish people immigrated in through Galveston, Texas. I had no idea.
Really? Oh, wow.
I know, amazing.
Huh.
It was amazing to me anyway. I mean, those of you who have family that have immigrated through Galveston, Texas, you're saying, well, yeah, of course. But
Right.
I was just
Yeah.
like, wow, you got to be kidding.
Yeah, because I'm thinking, well, they all came through New York, Statue of Liberty, right? Where else would they
Yeah.
come from?
Well, that's where my family came through.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
absolutely. So, yeah, in fact, I think at least one of my grandfather's names is at Ellis.
oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um, so then the other piece that I did using books was done to commemorate the Holocaust. And that was a very different type of piece to make because it was a very emotionally kind of fraught piece for me to make. But also, there were 12 books that were included in that piece. And again, I went to my VIP email list and said, "Hey, I'm going to be working on this piece. Do you have any books that I can have? Because they're not going to be, I can't return them to you, that are Polish, Italian, French, French, German, Russian. I hope I've got them all." And then, as it turns out, someone also sent me a Yiddish book. And the idea behind that was these books were going to symbolize, first of all, there were 12, so it's the 12 tribes of Israel. And then the books and the foreign languages had to do with the fact that these people were citizens of these specific countries and they were persecuted by their own. And then the books were displayed in a rack that was actually made not by me, but by an amazingly wonderful woodworker. Um, and the rack was made from shipping pallet.
Oh, okay.
So that's a repurposed thing too.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that he said that was the most difficult with making that was not making the rack to put the books in, but to get the pallet apart.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's something that I would never have thought of, but pallets are made to last, you know?
Yeah.
They're made to be very much tossed around
Right.
and
Very
but to
utilitarian. Yeah.
hold up.
Yeah.
So, anyway, on the cover, the books are displayed so that their covers are out, so we can see the cover. But I painted all of those books, and each one is like a puzzle piece for a single tree.
Right. Yeah.
And
I've seen pictures of that one. I don't think I'm sure I've seen the pictures of the diaspora piece, but this tree piece, the Holocaust piece is still in my head because I remember
yeah,
the visual of it.
yeah, and that was the first one that I did actually. The diaspora was second,
Oh, was it?
but Treatise is the name of the one that I'm talking about. That also was shown at the Smithsonian in 2014 or 2015.
Oh,
So
that's
I'm proud, but I'm very proud of that piece. It was, and that one also, I used a stool and I used a little like pitcher that, and I got all of these things. Somebody gave me the stool and I found the picture at an antique store. So, these were all things that kind of repurposed
Yeah.
things that I was using. The books I got from my email list. And also I couldn't find Polish books.
Oh,
Oddly
interesting.
enough, I just could not find Polish books. And then I don't know what took me so long to figure this out because I'm like banging my head trying to find Polish books. My grandfather was actually from Poland, but needless to say, that wasn't helpful. But I thought to myself, well, wait a minute, my sister-in-law's Polish.
Ah,
And so I contacted her and she contacted a friend of hers and connected us. And this friend sent me 3 Polish books.
so what kind of books were they that you were asking for? That were you specifically asking for very old books?
I was not as particular. I would have liked to have, gotten all old books.
Mm.
Some of them are old books, and some of them are not that old at all. If I had trouble finding a specific language, then I kind of like accepted what I could get.
Yeah.
The Polish books were, they weren't of the time of World War II, but they were, I'd say like 50s, 60s.
Huh.
Um, and what I really wanted were novels, stories, like about people's lives,
Mhm.
because the idea behind that also was that people's stories were either completely snuffed out
Mhm.
or they were totally changed.
Right.
Their lives were changed forever. And then each book is distressed on the inside. I either ripped them, singed them, or actually they had them shot with a gun.
Oh,
So
wait, what? You had them
yeah,
shot
yeah,
with a gun?
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
yeah. I had a student. This guy was great. He was from Wyoming, and he's an avid gun collector. I mean, he has so many guns, and I needed somebody to shoot my books. And so I asked some of the guards here where I have my studio if, they could shoot the book. And they said, well, yeah, I can shoot the books, but I have to account for all of my bullets. And you can't discharge a gun in Fairfax County, which is where I live.
Oh.
So one of my friends said, well, we can go out to Garrett County, Maryland, and I can shoot the books for you. And I'm like, well, okay, let me see if I can do it locally because I didn't want to take the time to go out to Garrett County. But where you could apparently discharge a gun without, anyway. So my student was like, oh, yeah, I can do that. And it's actually a funny story. He ended up he ended up making arrangements with a shooting range that was near my studio.
Oh,
And
wow.
he said, I'll meet you on Wednesday morning at like 8 o'clock or something. Like it was early. And I said, okay. So I come to meet him and he has a mask on. He's in his vehicle and he has a mask on. And by the way, the
Wait, what
guard,
kind of mask?
like a surgical mask.
Okay.
Okay. But this was way before COVID, right?
Uh-huh.
So people were not like running around in masks. So he has this mask on. And one of the guards here who said that he couldn't discharge his gun in Fairfax County actually went before I came and asked what the guy was doing here because, he had this mask on. Well, he told me that he was meeting me and the guard knew me. So all was well. But then the reason he had the mask on was because he had a cold or something and he didn't want to give it to me.
Oh,
So
well, that's very thoughtful.
I know. Anyway, or he could have been like recovering from the flu. I don't remember, but he had this mask on. And I'm like, great. I don't need whatever you have. Thank you very much. And so we ended up going to the firing range well before they opened to the public. It was so amazing because he talked to them and he told them what I was doing and, that he was helping me and could they open the firing range early? Or actually, I don't even think he asked. I think he said, would it be okay if we come in and do this? And they said, yes, not only that, we'll open it before the public comes.
Oh, okay.
And so we went in. He had, I had ear protection and goggles and all of that. firing ranges. I don't know from firing ranges.
Oh,
So, I go in with him and he hands me the ear protection and the goggles, and we put the books. I didn't want to disturb the covers. So we fashioned the books so that it would only go through the bullet would only go through the paper that was
oh,
part of the story.
how
And
did you do that?
took rubber bands and put it around the covers so that they were on one side and then the book pages were on the other. And he was a good shot.
So you just stood them up that way or
Yeah, we
something?
stood him up on a bucket, and then he would ask me, about where do you want the bullet hole? And I would say, right about there. And he'd shoot it, and he was a good shot.
Wow.
It was like, okay. And off we went. And then, oh, he was he was so into this that he said, well, so what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm going to, you know, paint it so that it looks like blood. And he said, oh, you can use my blood. And I'm like, no, I didn't go so far as to ask, how he was collecting that for me.
Right.
Because really, I didn't want to know.
No, I wouldn't want to know either.
So, I mean, that was treatise. And the idea behind it was that people would be able to open the books and see what, that the
Oh, so you
interior.
wanted people to handle the books.
I wanted it to be interactive, but then I realized the folly of my thinking, because when I first displayed the piece, not at the Smithsonian, but I had in one of the books, it was actually the Yiddish book, I had a little bookmark, which was an acorn
Oh,
on a little branch, because of course the tree and all of that. And so, I had this little acorn there, and I'm literally, like, the moment after it was first displayed, this was at the Jewish Community Center. A kid broke off
of course.
the acorn. So it was like, all right, I can't have people were too, they weren't careful when they were handling them.
Yeah,
And I understand that.
I guess
So
people, yeah. I could see people not meaning to be not careful, but it would happen. Yeah.
yeah. Although the breaking off of the acorn, that was intentional. That was
Oh,
oh, good. I can take that. Yeah.
oh man.
So I had to then, by that time, the acorns were not easily gathered,
Oh,
So
oh,
I had to, like, find and, talk to people and let them know. And they told me, oh, yeah, we have some acorns in our yard still. And I did that. But yeah, so I have used things other than paint um, to make my work. But and who knows? I have some plastic over here that is really cool, and I'm trying to figure out if I can actually put it in one of my paintings as a piece of collage material. But I have a feeling that the paint will resist.
oh, interesting. So some painters I know use saran wrap to
Hmm.
put on top of paint and then peel it back up. Do you do
Yep.
that at all?
I used to actually, believe it or not, I did that with my pastel work.
Oh.
Not I would do it as part of an underpainting.
Mhm.
So let's say I would do the pastel painting on a piece of pastel sandpaper, which is common. I would then take the saran wrap and watercolor or maybe acrylic, and I would put that on the paper, wait for it to dry, and then I would paint over that.
Oh, interesting. Mm. My studio mate here,
Mm.
she uses acrylic paint and she does use some plastic, but she mostly uses the plastic for drop cloth, and she's been saving those for me. But there's another artist friend of mine who paints with acrylic paint, and she frequently uses the stretch wrap,
Mhm.
the plastic stretch wrap to get these fun effects, and she's saving those for me. She's already saved some before that I've actually used in an artwork. So I love that little I love that she can't use it in her art, but she can save it for me to use.
I
And
like that.
my next door neighbor is actually saving her acrylic skins.
Oh yeah.
Do you use acrylic skins in your
I don't, but I have had friends that did, and they use them in their work. And also I am thrilled because, I've been thinking about doing some using saran wrap to get some visual texture.
well,
Probably it would be an underpainting again.
if you do,
I'll send them to you.
save it for me. Yes, please.
Yeah, because I was thinking I don't really want to use it because I don't want to throw it away.
Yeah. Yeah, no, whenever I encounter an artist that is, nearby or a friend, I always ask for that because sometimes I will use paint on my plastic, but most of the time I do not. So I don't have that doesn't come into my studio regularly. So I love that somebody else is
And
using and then I can use it.
that just made me think, I do on occasion, I haven't done it for quite a while, but I do on occasion, if I want to see whether or not something's going to work and I don't want to, take the photograph and put it into Photoshop and do all of the, you know, folderol that is involved with that, I will use acetate.
Uh-huh.
And, so I don't think it will resist. Now, I've been thinking, that plastic that I have over there that I want to potentially use as collage material, I think it'll be fine. But I have on occasion used acetate and put it on a painting to see if I want to paint a specific shape or will
So
this color work?
acetate is clear plastic, and
Mhm,
you put it on top of your painting and paint whatever thing that you might want to have, so then
mhm.
you can lift it off and just see. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've done that like with ischemic writing.
Uh-huh.
On acetate so I can see whether or not that's going to look good before I actually try to do the ischemic writing. And why, oh, why does it always look better on the acetate than when I actually do the painting? I don't know.
So does it come off the acetate afterwards, or you get rid of the acetate usually?
No, I mean, one of the ischemic writing things I still have because I really like the way it came out. But yeah, usually I've tossed it, so I'm going to stop doing that.
Well, I'm wondering though, if the acrylic paint sticks to the acetate so well, I wonder if you can make translucent paintings on the acetate, period.
Now that could be really cool too. That's a thinking cap thing that is going to be knocking around in my head for a while.
Happy to give out ideas.
Yeah, I always like that. I also, by the way, I also use collage material now, which I hadn't done until probably late last year, early this year. I started using collage material.
What is
I
your gloss material?
Well, it's paper. It is not plastic, but old books.
Mhm.
Old books that are really not going like a paperback that is just not that
Precious.
precious.
Yeah.
Books are really precious to me, so it's just
Agreed.
when I rip into a book, it kind of feels like an assault.
Yes.
It's it took me a long, long time to even feel comfortable writing in a book because we were taught that you just didn't do that.
Oh yeah, totally. Me too. My father was like, he was so strict about that. He was like, you respect books, you don't do that. And he actually, I think about him when I see an installation like yours that you've painted on the books.
Mm.
And I think that he would be rolling over in his grave. I'm sorry, but he would be like, you do not do that to a book. He was so particular about his books. The only thing that he allowed in a book was his ex libris,
Yes.
just the stamp. And I actually designed one for him when I was a teenager, and he very proudly stamped it in all his books. But that was like the only thing. You used a bookmark, you never bent a page. So although I love art like yours where books are used, and then there's this paper artist whose name I can't think of now, that takes old books apart and then twists the pages into these shapes and makes these gigantic installations out of them. And There must be more than one artist who does that. I'll have to look up the name of this artist. I follow her on Instagram. Oh, actually, I think, oh yeah, I was in an exhibit with her in in Brooklyn. So I'll definitely look her up.
Oh, yeah, I would like to see.
Yeah, I love that kind of art. But inevitably, every time I see book art, I think of my dad and I think, oh my God, he would be ranting and raving that this book was destroyed.
Well, do you think he still would? Because, you know, because I felt that way, you know, for a long time. And then like a switch went off. And I think it had to do with, you know, once we have e-readers and we have all of these, you know, our iPads and our computers and all of these things where we read. And so a lot of people are not paying that much attention to books anymore. So it's kind of giving books a new life. Um,
Oh,
but
I
I
agree.
but I, you know, and I don't know whether he would feel that way. I don't know about my dad because he also had those book plates. And in fact, I had that he put inside his books. And
Mhm.
I have his. And
Yeah, I have my dad somewhere too. I don't know where it is, but
yeah,
I
I
know.
can't find him because they of all things, they had a little tree. And it was, and then in like the tree was this beautiful illustration of a tree, and there was a book in the tree, like the branches came up and the book
Yeah.
was there.
Oh, yes, I've seen images like that, similar
Mhm.
to that.
And
Yeah.
I've wanted to use those in my collage material. I have used, in fairness, I have used things where I have copied and then used them in as collage material because a lot of the things that I'm using are handwriting of my father or
Oh,
handwriting of my mother, and I can't, if I can't bring myself to use the original because then I won't have any more to
and it's
use.
gone. Yeah, I agree. I have some postcards that were written and sent through the mail from my great grandmother to my great grandfather back and forth from when they were courting to when they were already married. So, I mean, they're phenomenal. So I have them and I haven't, I keep thinking one day I will figure out how to use them in my art,
Mhm.
but for now they're just precious and I've had them for
Yes.
decades now but I can't imagine ever doing anything to them to destroy them completely. But
Yeah.
I don't know, my dad, I think, you know, in his last years, he was reading on a Kindle book.
An e-reader,
He
yeah.
was doing a lot of that, but he still had his library of older books that he loved, and he still felt very precious about them, even though he was on a budget and he wasn't allowed to buy so many new books anymore. So
Yeah, but
that's using them on reading the Kindle. But yeah, I don't know. I think he would still be pretty precious about books.
well, and you know, the thing about the both of those installations, to some extent, were revering books anyway because they were so important.
Yeah, no,
So that's
I understand that, but I wonder if someone like my dad,
would
who
not necessarily see that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I get it. I get it because, and that's one of the reasons why the books were in the trunk, for example, because people could only bring you know, a small amount of things. You certainly know this from, you know, things that you and I've talked about when your family immigrated to the United States. You were so limited in the things that you could bring. And I think that a lot of people brought books
yeah,
because
no,
books
my
were,
father had books shipped. So when we came over, I think we had basically just suitcases and they shipped stuff that was supposed to make it to the United States several months after we did. I think it made it here almost 2 years later. And a lot but it made it, and a lot of it was my dad's books.
wow.
And of course, there was some stuff that, like, I think they wound up not using at all because it was completely useless, like some pots and pans and stuff. 2 years have gone by, they bought some pots and pans,
Yeah.
but, you don't know these things when you're immigrating to a whole new world, but yeah, so some of those books came with my dad, so I could understand that he would feel so precious about them.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and collage is so, going back to that, collage is so wonderful because you can use this ephemera that meant something and means something to you personally.
Yeah.
But in the case of what I'm doing, most people can't see that it's there.
You can't.
They'll just get up closer to the artwork and say, "Oh, look, there's handwriting there."
Yeah.
I actually bought some old postcards in France when I was there, teaching workshop in April, and went to this old bookstore, and they had these postcards that were amazing.
Mm.
Um, uh, I think like 1938 and
How
1933,
cool.
and I'm thinking about what's coming, for France and the world at that time period. But the handwriting is beautiful, and it's teeny, teeny tiny, and the images on the front, black and white images, were really cool, so I'm using those for my collage material as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's I kinda think about it, people use old photographs in their art practice, and heck, and old books because, people die, families separate, whatever happens, and people pass on their possessions or sell them, or they wind up in a flea market, and I think it's better that someone like you and I, an artist, finds these treasures and uses them in their art instead of them just languishing and then being thrown out in the trash.
Well, my sister's actually scanning all these photographs that
Oh,
my mother had, but I really want her to give them to me once she's finished doing that because I want to utilize them in my
yeah.
work.
Oh, that would be so cool.
There are a lot of great photographs, and I poured through those photographs when I was a kid. I mean, I
Yeah.
just poured through them. I wanted to understand. I think that what was going on is I wanted to understand my parents, and I wanted to understand them. I wanted to understand who they were before they were my parents.
Ah,
I can't quite figure out why it was so important to me to pour through those photographs. My sister didn't.
oh, oh, everybody's different.
You
Yeah.
know? Yeah, but, I didn't realize she didn't. I just assumed she did, you know? I
Right.
did. Why wouldn't she? But I was just fascinated with them, fascinated with, what they both looked like and wondered what they were thinking and what they were doing, and so I like the idea of including that in my work some way, and I was really fortunate because I grew up with both sets of grandparents in my hometown. And so I was very close to all of them, and to incorporate that into my work is wonderful, even if nobody knows they're there.
Right. Yeah, you know what they're there, and I think a lot of times art that incorporates something like that just exudes it somehow, and the right person feels that connection whether they can see it or not.
Well, I've been making the mistake of telling people when they come to my studio and showing them, like, where, this my
Oh.
son's sitting, and they're like, "Well, that's too personal, you can't sell that," and I'm like, "Yeah, I actually can because, you know, I have these things, they're not going anywhere." But so I'm gonna stop telling people that.
Yes, I'm telling.
'Cause, I'm just gonna ask them how it makes them feel,
Yeah,
and
and
that's
then, maybe if they make that discovery, then you can fess up.
yeah, yeah, and, say that these were good people, not people that you would not want to know.
Yes, yes. Oh, that's so cool. Well, thank you, Lynn. This has been a really fun conversation, as they usually are.
I was
But
just gonna say, they always are.
I know, so those you guys listening, Lynn and I talk regularly about once a month.
Yes, we do,
Yes,
and it's a wonderful thing. I'm grateful to have you in my life.
yes, we're accountability buddies.
Indeed.
Thank
S
you, Lynn. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Thanks for listening in. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. This podcast was created, produced, and edited by me, Natalia Korover. Theme music by R.C. Gaida. Find out more about me at artbynatalia.com. Find out about my community at repurposercollective.com and about my education initiatives at ecoloop.art. Thank you for listening.